Okay, in the same vein as the previous recording that I did, that might have gone out last week, I'm doing something a little bit different with these videos I'm doing at the moment. I spoke a lot about the what over the last 6 or 7 months while I've been putting together the framework. What I want to get stuck into at the minute is the how. And I started that process last week with the video around the overall process and the service offering that we offer here at ProjIQ, linking into the H.U.M.A.N framework. What I'm going to do for this video is I'm actually going to do a little bit of a deeper dive on the project discovery piece that I mentioned in that video as one of the 3 areas: project discovery, project execution, and project delivery. We're going to go over the previous slides that came in the previous pack, just to again refresh really what we're talking about here, and then we're going to go into a little bit of detail around the different areas that will be encapsulated within a discovery, and some of the areas that we will look at specifically as we're spinning up and getting all the information together for a particular project before it kicks on. Okay, so with that, let's get into it. The whole tagline of what I've tried to put together is: we are all about structured delivery, driving it through people, and that's how it links back to the H.U.M.A.N framework, right? That's what it's all about. But the reason why I started down this journey was around some of the problems and issues that I was seeing day to day via work with clients. And it comes back to those 2 things really that I've spoke about at length before, which has been that delivery carries the burden of a lot of things upstream, as well as gaps that are seen within the interactions between people. And all of that means that delivery becomes a bit clunky, and it ends up costing you a lot more than you actually realise it is. And that the traditional frameworks tend to hide these losses because it's not something that they're actively looking into. But the core message here is that if you are solving problems in delivery, if delivery is weighted heavier than the work that's been done upstream, you are paying a premium for that delivery, and it's all in unseen. So a little bit about us and a little bit about how we stabilise these delivery outcomes, and that is all basically back to the H.U.M.A.N framework. And the framework is focused on making delivery a lot simpler, and I use the word a lot more boring. You want delivery to be boring. But boring. And not by removing any structure. What we want to do is make it work for people, and often that comes from laying some additional bits and pieces on top of what you've already got. But in turn, that simplifies the process that we're trying to put into place. And some of the traditional process gaps that you tend to see is misalignment between stakeholders and teams, often because of a lack of communication or a lack of the work done up on the left, upstream of delivery. Ceremonies and artifacts that are just checkboxes. We're not getting out of them the actual value that we need to see by asking what I highlight are different questions than what people normally ask. You also see silent blockers caused by poor communication as well, things that are not identified and not mitigated through the fact that they just kind of slip underneath the radar. Low motivation and team fatigue, and that comes back to a lot of the stuff that I talk about week in, week out, and how things impact teams and how that has a knock-on effect as well, indirectly and in unforeseen ways. And the deliveries that technically sound but contextually off. So the solution that might be picked on the left might be the right solution, but because of environmental issues, and by environmental I mean environmental within the organisation, the solution actually needs to be readdressed to suit that. It could be, for example, that a solution's been picked, but you don't necessarily have the right skill set in-house to solve that problem. And that's what we're a lot about, which is understanding the solution, but also understanding the context too. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about more and more as time goes on is the actual service offering itself here at ProjIQ, which is the 3 areas that's on screen at the moment. You have project discovery, project execution, and project rescue. And I'm going to go into those a little bit more detail as this presentation goes on. But here's a couple of taglines around these particular items. Project discovery is a discovery in itself. There's a project and we need to know a little bit more before we actually commit and make decisions around forwarding that into actual executables. But what we want to do is put a lot of focus on the left on shared understanding and early alignment. And that will enable informed decisions that may not have come. I'm going to skip execution for a second. I'm going to jump to Project Rescue, because that Project Rescue is very much around re-establishing the direction and confidence for a project. A project might be being hindered by something, decisions not being made for various reasons, the solution might be wrong, and obviously confidence starts to drop. But it's a foot on the ball moment to go, right, are we doing the right thing? And in a short amount of time, trying to figure out, is this still the right path forward, or do we need to reassess and readjust? And then rebuild the engagement around that delivery and repurpose it for a successful delivery. And then back to execution is actually the execution of the delivery of either discovery or rescue, or of a normal project that might not be in either of those phases. Embedding momentum through clear roles, making sure clarity is there for everybody that's involved in the delivery, and also making sure that there's real core collaboration with the people that will be getting the project delivered. And the key part is building trust and ownership around that delivery. Our delivery model. So this is a little bit more about H.U.M.A.N. I've spoke about it a lot at length, and this kind of goes into it a little bit more detail. And at first, what I'm trying to show here is how it breaks down, and I can give a bit more of an explanation that I've probably not given on other videos. So you see it broken down there. So you've got the first step, which is here in a line, establishing a foundation and a vision for a project. How that needs to be interpreted is that discovery section. It is making sure we've got the right requirements, we've got the right capability in-house that's ready to do the delivery, establishing some initial risks, and coming up with a view of, do we have the right path forward? Do we have the right detail to inform the decisions to make commitment for delivery? And then you're into the actual flow of building the project up after that. You have understand an architect, design optimal solutions. So you are going to get those requirements built upon. We will be looking at architecture here and solution designs, understanding the core underpinnings between the different aspects of the technical architecture within the company or client. And then we've got map and mobilize, which is creating an execution roadmap and plan. What I will say about this section is there's time that's spent here to make sure that we do have the right resources in play ready to do this delivery when we're at this point, because what we need to be making sure is that we're ready to, in a short amount of time, execute. We don't want to be getting to a point of actually starting to do code and then actually spotting that we have an area that we haven't thought about, and we end up having to think about drafting in other people's. Assess and analyze. This is all about monitoring KPIs and performance. Dashboards and getting all those kind of bits and pieces set up so that once we are into the flow of delivery, we're creating that transparent layer to make sure that everybody's aware of how we're progressing. But the key point for this is making sure that these are dashboards that work for the team, that don't impede the team from delivery. It actually supports delivery and supports decision making around the project to make sure we're maintaining positive forward momentum. And then you've got navigate and deliver, which is delivery. That's the execution of the delivery, but making sure that the foundations of delivery continue to be people-centered. Here's it broken down into a little bit more detail. So you can see at the top there, you've got all the different sections, and then you have underneath that kind of a core value of what we're trying to achieve within those sections. And then below that, you can see, again, the overall direction of where we're trying to push the team. So in here in a line, it's all about requirements clarity. In Understand an Architect, it's all about making sure that we're making the right technical decisions, and it goes on and on and on until you get to delivery, where it's all about team delivery excellence. The whole point of why I did this was to start to answer some really, really key questions around the different sections of delivery, and understanding the problems that I saw in delivery and trying to figure out what it meant to the different stages of a delivery process. So you can see there under H, here in a line, that should all be about understanding what voices and needs must be heard, recorded, and on top of that, which indicators will provide shared purpose and vision for success. Under U, the Understand an Architect, that is all about understanding what solution is going to reduce friction and create real business value for users. But also, if we're in a position where we are needing to make decisions, it's all about understanding trade-offs and making sure that they get to the right people for decisions and that it's transparent across the board. From an M perspective, map and mobilize, we are looking at stakeholders' awareness of what success looks like. who owns what, and the true delivery capacity. Sometimes decisions are made upstream about a delivery without taking into context the actual capability that you've got within the team, and how actually the teams will deliver that solution as well, and what steps they will go to. And that could be as core as how the environmental structure will work for them, but also, again, how we will evidence the readiness and ownership at the end of that stage to make sure that we can give the thumbs up that we're ready to progress forwards. From an A perspective, assess and analyse, this is all about the human delivery signals. What are they telling us, and what must change for success? And what I like to use in elements like this, and there's a toolkit that goes along with this, is asking human-centered questions around the team or the users. Within one of the examples I use is around a risk register. Everybody understands what a risk register is, right? But no one ever asks when we're looking at a risk, okay, that's a risk and we've got a mitigation and an owner. But do we understand how that risk will ultimately impact the user? Is it an internal high-value priority risk for one reason or another, which doesn't really impact a user? Or is the opposite true? But also as well, understanding if we get a mitigation, what's the team's confidence rating of that mitigation that it will solve that problem? And these are how I like to frame some questions really when we're actually breaking down the delivery process at large. From an end perspective, it's all about how do we sustain trust while we're delivering measurable value. And it's trust up and down. It's not just trust up to stakeholders, it's also trust downstream in the delivery with the team as well. So decision gates. Again, like there's always been a fallacy that agile means you just can kind of paperwork's non-existent and governance is non-existent, and none of that is actually true. The key thing to understand with agile is that governance is still very much a thing and it needs to be considered, and this is true also within what I'm trying to implement within clients with the H.U.M.A.N framework too. And what this is here about is breaking it down and understanding how do you get from the left-hand side across to the right. So if you're moving from H to U, realistically, you've got to have a stakeholder sign-off on the scope and actual vision of the delivery itself. You've really got to have that success criteria defined and agreed too. And any constraints and assumptions are documented and they're aware, and they will ultimately turn into risks as you go through the process. From U to M, you need to make sure that the technical solution is validated and given the thumbs up across the board too. That the integration approach is also considered. We're living in a time with software where it's not just delivering an application onto a laptop. You have to be aware of API connections. You have to be aware of data flows. Not many software deliveries can get away with that these days. It has to be thought about and it has to be confirmed that there's an approach for that too. And making sure that any decisions are fully approved from the right bodies. When you move from M to A, the team are basically assembled and ready. Plans are approved and baselined and ready to go. But you've also got that quality methodology too. And what do I mean by that? Well, we need to be making sure that testing's thought about. How are we going to make sure that the deliverables are going to be in a test-ready state? And how are we going to provide evidence that these have been tested to a satisfactory level? And then A to N, this is all about making sure that monitoring systems are operational, you've got the team performing effectively, and there's value starting to come out of the delivery too. So the how, we now get to the point of actually looking at project discovery and the actual nuts and bolts of what that looks like when we're actually working through that process. One of the things I want to call out, and I'm going to go back to this slide, is the actual overall process for H.U.M.A.N. And what I'm trying to draw attention to is that project discovery really sits in this first vertical area. This is where the overall value that we're trying to push for is the foundation and the vision. And with the output that pushes us on through those points, which is the clarity around the requirements. So taking that process down into the actual discovery, here's how I built up the process to actually think about what does project discovery actually encompass and what do we need to get out of it. Back to the core questions that I was talking about before, what is project discovery all about? Well, it's all about whose voices and needs must be heard and recorded. It's all about understanding and capturing everybody's opinion that is vital to the project and making sure it's recorded on the left to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And also linked to that, which indicators are going to provide the shared purpose and vision for success of the actual delivery. The overarching approach is stakeholder mapping, requirements workshops and understanding, defining the vision of the project and actually defining the success criteria as well. If we look at the blue area, your stakeholder mapping directly links into influence analysis. So who has any influence around the delivery that you're doing in any regard, mapping it and understanding how they could link into an engagement piece. It's very similar to when you think about stakeholder charts, really, when you've actually looked at a project in its infancy before. But what we do in this, and I'll get into this a little bit more detail, is actually asking different questions to make sure we're engaging with those stakeholders in the right ways, which other frameworks do sometimes tend to miss. From a requirements workshop, we're obviously looking at the prioritization of the features, what needs to come first, the dependencies, and how you start to pull at the thread for the actual delivery of the overall solution. And that then links into a user story map. This is an activity that I do a lot with clients, is creating a visual diagram, really, of the work that will happen and how it interlinks into different systems. So you can kind of then chart an order of actually how you need to kind of progress through the delivery. They're often referred to as work breakdown structures. I'm very visual, so they work really, really well for me. And it helps me understand technically the solution as well. And then that helps me talk with more confidence around how we're actually going to do it. From a vision definition perspective, what we're looking at there is the boundaries of the scope, what's in and what's out, and the actual approach of it too, and the technical capabilities that kind of filter into that as well. And what I spoke about before around the effort and capability matrix is that's where this comes in. We need to be given an outline of all the different swim lanes of activity and an assessment of if we're fit for purpose and match fit ready for delivery. For example, if we get an idea that there's some API integration or some data integration, do we have the availability of the data team, and is it well covered, so to speak, to make sure that we can do the delivery without impeding any single points of failure and that kind of stuff. And then feeding that back with risks around that area so we can make informed decisions. From a success criteria perspective, we're thinking about the acceptance methodology, and that feeds directly then into the project charter, which should underpin any project. And it captures the why, the what, the who, and all that kind of good stuff. And again, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail as we go through this presentation. All of this activity then leads to a point where you have a business case and you get stakeholder sign-off. So you can commit to funding to move you into the actual delivery process itself. So we'll get stuck into now the here and align activities into a little bit more value, in a bit more detail. So linking back to what we've just said there, the key activities that's going to come out of this phase is making sure we've got stakeholder alignment and making sure we've got that vision definition, making sure that we've got the requirements gathered and they're prioritized in the right order, identifying the constraints and assumptions that are being made around the delivery, the definition of success and the delivery scope itself, and that preliminary effort and capability outline. Again, do we have the right things to move forward? The key value of doing this activity is that the team walks away with their clear North Star for delivery. And the vision is understood by all, not just the delivery team, but people on the outside of it as well. Your key stakeholders, your higher management that have obviously got a vested interest in the delivery. So the first output to talk about here is the project canvas. So the human value of this is it keeps the initiative anchored into the human impact and the business outcomes. It's not just a set of tasks. The key detail that we will be looking to capture within the human framework is the key stakeholders and roles who are going to underpin the delivery success. The confirmed scope, what are we actually delivering? Out of scope, what are our clear boundaries, what we can't go across? The success criteria, how are we going to know when we're done and we've been successful? And our high level milestones, the thing that everybody likes to talk around, time, when are things going to get delivered? And key constraints, what's going to impact progression to us directly? Stakeholder map. The human value around this is it's going to build empathy by recognising stakeholders as people with concerns, not job titles. I can't emphasise this enough. Stakeholders are important, but they're also people and they like to be engaged with in specific ways. This will strengthen trust by showing that you're going to listen to how people feel, just not what they decide. And it helps prevent disengagement or resistance early. There's a lot of projects that are impacted out there because the engagement isn't right and stakeholders are just not bought in or not engaged with delivery. The key differentials that I'll be capturing as part of this is sentiment and emotional indicators. So when we're meeting with those stakeholders, what's the body language telling us? How is that interaction going? What can we glean from that interaction that will impact the project? Are they a little bit hesitant? Are they relaxed? Are they really positive? Is it a difficult engagement? Are they not talking very much? The preferred communication methods. Again, I can't stress this enough in the working environment in which we work right now. The old school style of booking a meeting with everybody doesn't work all the time. You have to understand how people like to be engaged. Is it a telephone call? Is it an email? I struggle with phone calls. I prefer face-to-face meetings when dealing with these kind of areas. So if you're going to get me on a phone call, I'm probably going to be doing something else. My attention's going to be divided. It's just, again, it's a different way of interacting with these people. Not everybody responds to just having a meeting put in the diary. Stakeholders tend to be busy. A requirements list. The human value of this is it's going to promote clarity. Everybody's going to know what's actually being asked for. And it builds alignment. Stakeholders are going to see their needs reflected. They're going to see them there. They're getting what they want as part of the scope. And it reinforces that empathy. Requirements are tied to people. They're not just features. Key detail, again, that links back to the framework is we need to be asking the question why this requirement matters. What benefit is it going to provide to users? Often that gets missed. We go down the route of delivering something for a user, and by the point you get to requirements, we're just wrapped up in internal conversations about what it means to the business. We've got to start thinking about how it impacts users, because if it doesn't impact users, there is a vital question that needs to be asked. Success criteria. With this, the human value is that success is felt as well as measured. It creates a shared alignment on what good is and reduces wasted effort by chasing outcomes that don't really matter to people. Again, the key points that we want to be asking about this and capturing is feature target. What are the guide rails to confirm success for a particular piece of work? And the human value. How are users going to feel upon implementation? When they're using the product or the feature, how are they feeling? Is it confident? Have they been started on the journey from beginning to end and they feel like they can pick this up and it's intuitive? Business case. It's an old one, this one. It's used across the land and I'm not reinventing the wheel. What I am trying to say with this is let's make sure that we're capturing the right detail to emphasize successful delivery. Within the human framework, what I'm saying is this really promotes transparency. Stakeholders are going to see why this project is even happening. An alignment. Teams are going to be able to rally around the value of it. Engagement. It highlights cultural human benefits alongside the hard pieces such as return on investment. Key detail that I'm trying to capture here is cultural fit. How does this piece of work align with values, behaviours and people first principles within the organisation? Does it fit or is it off kilter? And is there a question that needs to be asked around what we're doing and why? Risks and alternatives. Do we know at this point any known risks? And with those risks and with the solution as a whole, were any other paths considered? And if they were discarded, why? And then a decision point. Often people go into meetings not really knowing why they're going in front of their stakeholders. What we need to get better at doing is when we've got these people in a room, on a call, in a Teams meeting, their time is really, really valuable. So we need to be clear about what we're asking them for. Is it funding? Is it approval or a decision? Do you have an issue which you need pointing in the right direction around this before it moves on to the next step? Effort and capability snapshot. I've talked about this at length and this is something that I've really put a time and effort into because where this came from was it all comes back to that piece about making sure we are prepared on the left and upstream of delivery. Sometimes decisions are made around solutions because we feel like it's the right thing to do or we've been asked to deliver a certain product. But actually, when you start to get into delivery, you find that things are highlighted that would have actually made the decision be reconsidered. And that's what this is about. The human value around this is transparency again. Leaders are going to see realistic capability within the teams and not inflated promises. What I mean by that is, if we're saying that we're going to do something by X, is it considering that you have the right skills in place? Or do you need to bring in more support for a particular specific skill set? Empathy. It acknowledges the human side of capacity and it's not just numbers. And growth. It shows where skills development can strengthen future delivery as well. Do we have single points of failure that we need to address? The key detail we're going to capture on this that is a little bit different to what you tend to find in normal documents is firstly effort estimate. How long is it going to take under current conditions? So if you have one developer right now, and you might have promises that somebody might come in 3 months, but you don't have them right now, what does that mean? Key skills required. What tech stack or expertise is needed within the team for delivery? You might have them and there might not be a risk, but you might be missing key testing for automation, for example, or you might be missing that React developer that you've been begging for ages, and that is going to impede the delivery. So the timescales have to address that. And it's a risk, right? The current capability, what people are available at present to support the delivery. You might have the right technical resource, but they might not be available for 4 months. So that means you can't start. 4, gaps and risks. What are we needing to mitigate right away? What is screaming at us in the face to go, sort this first, please? And then number 5, a confidence rating. How confident are we for delivery right now based on everything we've found? Is it low? Is it medium? Is it high? And then everything that you've captured is the justification for that. What this does, as an artifact, you can sit in front of stakeholders with all the detail and go, you've got higher levels of risks if you move forward, and it comes back to the options for delivery. What do you recommend based on this capability, and how would you readjust? So the client value, when you think about everything I've just spoke about there, this is all about what a client gets, right? Firstly, structure. It's a short-term investigation into the business value and how you're going to deliver against the requirements, bearing in mind everything that's at play within that particular environment. Clarity. It's a clear, shared view of what delivery looks like right now. And we're highlighting the risk and constraints and capability gaps so you can make informed decisions. Technical direction. It's expert-led assessments of the viable options with a clear, practical recommendation for delivery. And then peace of mind that comes along with it. It's fast, it's fixed price, as I've already said, and it's a discovery that maintains momentum and it reduces uncertainty before you make a big investment. This is the last slide. Feel free to take a little scan of the QR code there. You'll go to my website where you can learn a little bit more. What I would like to know is how people have found listening to this. As I said, this is very different to the normal kind of stuff that I put out, but I felt like I really want to get into the how, as I've said before. I'm enjoying doing this, and as I said on the previous one, to quote a famous TV show, we're opening the kimono a little bit here, and we're showing about how we do this at ProjIQ to drive some interest, to work with more clients outside of who we're already working with. Like, this is something that we're really passionate about here, and we really feel that based on previous experience, this is something that can drive a lot of business value by asking things that people don't tend to ask. If you want to learn more and you've hit the QR code, please come to me as well. Like, I really do enjoy the conversations that I'm having around this, and I'm more than willing to sit down and go into a little bit more detail with people too. And also let me know, like, we've got 2 other areas that I'm happy to go through too, which is the execution side, which is the normal day-to-day nuts and bolts delivery. And then we've also got the project rescue as well. So this was just a tester, and I'd love to know more about what people think of it. So with that in mind, thank you for listening. I think we're around the 30-minute mark, so well done again. And I look forward to speaking to you soon. But other than that, I hope you're having a good day. See you later.